Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1 of Reversing the Stigma: How I've Healed My Inner Child. First, let's start off with the basics. My name's Kate, and I am going to be going back through time, as well as present and future, to tell you a little bit more about how I grew up, what I had to deal with, how I am reversing that stigma now before I have children, and the things I've done up until now and continue to do to heal that broken inner child in me. So, the purpose of this podcast is really to not only tell my story to share with others, to give them hope that you can grow up in a bad situation and end up in a better spot. It's also to be like a big sister to people, a good friend, anybody who has questions, who's struggling with similar situations, or they've dealt with similar things in the past and they're still trying to get over it, so maybe they need some guidance on where to start, or what does it look like, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? And I'm here to tell you that that answer is yes. So just to start back at the beginning, I was born on October 23rd of 1992 in a town called Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up. I do not currently live there, but I did live there up until I was about 29 years old. I grew up, funnily enough, on a street called High Street and Virgin Lane. We lived in a double block. It was honestly a nice house. It had like a basement on the lower bottom half with double doors that opened. It was basically like a whole other house down there. One side was pretty much like my dad's workshop and garage, and he did all of his work in there. And then the other side was a full living room, bathroom, kitchen, and then beyond that kitchen was our washer and dryer. And we would like go through phases of using this space to have people over, and then sometimes it would like just collect stuff, like any other typical basement. But that that was just the bottom half. Then when you went upstairs to what we would call the first level, where you would enter the house, it only had one entrance to get in, because the front entrance, you can get in through the bottom. But on that second level, there's only an entrance through the back. The front entrance, if you will, was on a high porch that didn't have stairs or anything. It was more so enclosed. And there was a door that led to that balcony, but as I said, you weren't able to enter the house that way unless you went through the basement doors. So I we would park in the back and also enter through the back door. And yes, I know you're probably thinking, wow, you remember that house pretty vividly. I do. Um, Most people remember their childhood home vividly for a lot of other reasons, but I remember my childhood home vividly for not so good reasons, which is part of what I'm going to get into in these next couple episodes. It's something that I'm never 100% open about. I have told some people glimmers or glimpses of what it was like growing up in a house like that, um, or in my situation, I should say. And it's hard not to want to share, but I've had, unfortunately, so many people use what I've shared against me that I have tended not to share so much. But I feel like I'm in a place now where, like I said, I'm ready to give advice. I'm ready to share with people what I've went through, how I've overcome it, and where I am today, where I plan to be 5, 10 years from now. And I really just want to give other kids hope out there. If you leave home at a young age, I left home when I was 14 years old. We'll get into that. And I just want to be a really good role model for anybody that is struggling through similar or identical situations. I didn't have anybody to really turn to. I had people there for me. Um, but nobody ever really talked to me about the things I was going through. It was almost like they wanted to shelter me from it, but by trying to shelter me from it, I don't think they understood that they were silencing me. I remember the first time I ever found out that my parents were doing drugs. It was around Christmas time, and I couldn't have been any more than 6 or 7 around that age. Still very young. My mind is still very much a sponge. Um, but I've always been very intuitive, very smart. I pay attention to details, and it's boded well for me over the years. Not all the time, but for the most part. So when I was around 6 or 7 years old, we were at my childhood home, the one I had described, and I remember our parents were like fighting or something, and they were in their bedroom. And think of like typical movie scene right here. So me, my brother, and my sister are all sitting on the stairs, like that lead up from the dining room to the upstairs. And we're just kind of sitting there listening. My sister was the oldest, so she always made sure that my brother and I were taken care of. And, she would try to, especially when like she could drive and things like that, she would try to get us out of the house a lot so that that we didn't have to see it. And I'll always appreciate that, quite honestly. Because after my sister, found the love of her life, grew up and moved out, things were pretty difficult. I didn't have my protector there anymore, and I didn't want to share certain things with her in fear that I would ruin her life. And I can't say for sure even now why I thought that would ruin her life. She seemed so happy, and I didn't want to tell her what was going on at home and hold her from that. Even if she had an idea or an inkling, like I didn't want to put that pressure on her. That's something else we'll get to later. But again, we were sitting on the stairs and they were arguing. And I just remember looking up at my sister. I was kind of like sitting a stair or two down from her. And I was like, Heidi, I think mommy and daddy do drugs. And she just looked at me. She was like stunned, right? She didn't know. She didn't know what to say, what to do. I mean, I I wouldn't know what to do either. You have this child under 10 years old still developing, and they're telling you something that like they shouldn't even know about. And that's kind of where it all started for me. Um, that's those years, from about 6, 7 years old on. I remember all of those years like they just happened. And I just kind of held them in and pushed them down for a really long time. I was always embarrassed. I was always scared of what would happen to my parents if I told anybody. Um, so yeah, like my brother and I went through some stuff, and I went through some even more worse stuff. But reversing that stigma and reversing that cycle of not wanting a life like that for my future children, or not wanting to be that type of parent and parent my kids that way. Um, and I'm not, don't get me wrong, I am not judging my parents simply because maybe they didn't have great role models growing up. I know for sure my mom did not have a great role model growing up. Her mom was terrible to her. And that can mess you up. And unfortunately, I know that because my mom and I never really had a great relationship. I wanted so badly to be a mama's girl. And unfortunately, other things were more important to her at that time. But I honestly can't I don't know what she was going through, you know? So it sucks and it's wrong. It's very wrong. No one should ever have to go through that, especially when they can't fend for themselves. But it took me through a lot. It did. It took me through a lot. I will say that, and oh, I know that a lot of you are going to roll your eyes at this, but before even telling you the story, I just want to say how grateful I am to have gone through all of the things I've gone through in life for many reasons, but most importantly, it keeps me humble, it keeps me strong, it keeps me motivated. Obviously, to piggyback off of that, it makes me want to keep going and moving forward and strive for bigger and better things than I currently have. And to some people, that might be a flaw, but to me, that's what helps me achieve my goals. I've always had to get down and dirty and fight for what I want and really put in some grit behind it. Always. I don't know where kids get those types of survival instincts from. Like, I don't know. Is it inherited? Is it something that God gives us in the moment as his way of trying to protect us? Do we have little guardian angels out there? Like, so many questions. And I do have my beliefs, but um, they won't be shared here right now. So I am grateful. I'm very grateful that I had the people and the support that I did during those times. And I'm very grateful to God. And I'm still grateful to God till this day because life never lets up, right? Regardless of what you have, where you are, the amount of money in your bank account, life is going to knock you down. It inevitably will. And you just have to know that. I don't want to say always be prepared because that just sounds like you're always preparing for the worst, but open your eyes, really look beyond what's in front of your face so that you have a better understanding if it does happen to fall apart later down the road. Start pointing those things out now. This is a yellow flag. Oh, this might be a red flag, but is it a red flag I can handle? Just different. Why I used to ask myself this. I still ask myself this. Why is God putting me through this? Why? What's the reason? And I'll tell you what, this sounds so cliche because I've heard so many people say it, but God truly does only give his toughest battles to his strongest warriors. And I'll be honest, I'm proud to be a part of that club because some of the greatest freaking people in the world right now are ones who came from nothing, like myself, like maybe those of you listening. And guess what? For those of you listening that did come from something, this can be helpful for you too. I do not discriminate. I want you to listen to this. I want you to hear how it could have been for you. And I want you to be grateful and thankful to your family and your inheritances and, maybe even just pure luck. Some of us that really grew up with nothing, we just don't have great luck. And inevitably bad things happen to us. So just take a moment and be grateful for those of you that have always had, never had to ask, never had to struggle. Because there's a huge population of us out there that have had to and that still do. Let's continue reversing the stigma together. It's the only way we can better the world is doing better things for our future and our children and our children's children's future. It's the least we can do because Gen X and their parents and elder millennials and of course their parents, as I just said, they didn't have, not everybody had great role models growing up. It was a completely different time. Completely different time. And then having a kid in the 90s is an even way different time. You had your first two kids in like the 80s, and then you had me into the 90s. And, again, for those of you that don't know, I was born before the internet. We didn't have the internet until I was in, oh gosh, first kindergarten, first grade, something like that. Because I remember in grade school and then high school, we always used computers. It was just like a thing for us growing up. And, that right there was such a change from even what my brother and sister went through and grew up with. So not that I'm making excuses or anything, but it's just a completely different time. I think my generation of parents, those who are in their 60s and such, they didn't know what the heck they were doing. They didn't. Let's just call a spade a spade. I'm sorry, mom and dad. I love you, but you guys just didn't know what you were doing. They were having kids young. They weren't really figuring themselves out first, and then they were just kind of dragging us along while doing it. And that right there for me is 100% why I want to feel completely fulfilled, as selfish as that sounds to some people. I want to feel completely fulfilled before I even think about getting pregnant. I don't ever want to drag my kid through something that is going to affect them in the long run. And let's just say I don't want that to happen simply because of all of the trauma I endured from a young age and still to this day from my parents, from my friends, from people that I went to school with, jobs, society itself, you name it. It's not easy, and I don't think it ever will be easy for me. I I look like a cookie cutter. Let's just say that. I'm your typical average white girl with a high pitched voice and hobbies and dogs, and I carry myself well. And people see that, right? People see the outside of my book covering and they make their snap judgment off of that. And man, has that bothered me in life. It has bothered me so much. I hate when people look at me and they're like, oh, she looks so snotty and stuck up and blah, 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 blah. And that's really not who I am. It's not, I'm funny and goofy and quirky and, you know, I pretty much open up to anybody. as long as they seem respectful. Um, I always want the best for people. I try to show my love by gift giving and affirming certain things and just different stuff like that. And sometimes that scares people. They're not used to it. They're not used to somebody like me or people like me who they want to be angry and sad and down and just like, oh, my life sucks. And I don't carry myself that way. So they automatically depict this person, and I just want to shake them. Like, you don't even understand who I am on the inside. And I've never used that to my advantage. I would never tell people, like, oh, you think I'm this, blah, 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 blah. Now, if it got to a point, which it did one time in high school, girls were being girls, and I pulled the one girl aside and I pretty much had a heart to heart with her. And I was like, listen, I completely understand what y'all are saying and the things I wear and stuff, but I didn't even buy these clothes. My family didn't even buy these clothes. My boyfriend's family bought these clothes for me. Like, my parents are complete fucking drug addicts. I was born a crack baby. I just like, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. And I'll be honest with you, she was on the cheerleading squad with me, and from that conversation forward, at least her and I, we were cool. She understood and she sympathized, and that was gosh, that was like my junior or senior year in high school. But funnily enough, that same girl and her group of friends, when I was in 7th grade, which was also considered high school for us, we didn't have a middle school where I went. It was just 7th grade through 12th grade at our high school. And me and my other two friends got jumped. Well, my other two friends got held back, and these 5 girls jumped me. And the girl that I later spoke to my junior, senior year and finally opened up to her about my situation, she told me that the reason they had jumped me way back when was because somebody told them down the grapevine that I'm stuck up and a racist. And I remember crying. I remember just feeling so disgusted with being thought of that way. And I felt even more disgusted that the only reason they ended up respecting me in the end was because I had to be open with them. But even saying it back now as a 32-year-old adult, I think the girl I spoke to, I think it was a lesson learned. You have to be communicative with people, even if you feel like you don't need to be. And set those expectations of what you want out of their friendship, situationship, whatever it is that you call it. They need to know a little bit about you. And guess what? If they are the people to judge you and say those things, you should nip it in the bud a lot sooner than I did. I didn't know how to handle this situation all that time ago, and ended up in that situation. And thankfully, I was okay. Barely came out of it. I had a couple bumps and bruises, nothing crazy. Um, but yeah, at the time, I couldn't understand why or how somebody can be so upset with me for how I look and dress and how I carry myself, and just by rumors that they heard, and decide that that girl should get jumped. It definitely made me tougher. So, looking back on it now as an adult, I'm grateful that I went through that experience. It taught me to be more open with people and to not feel like I have to hide everything, because sometimes when you try to hide everything, it just makes you look worse. It makes you look like you're lying. So always be open, even if you feel like it might kick you in the butt later. And sometimes it might. I can't lie to you. I've been in that position. But being honest and open with that girl was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Because I bet if I saw her to this day, she would probably look at me and be like, "Wow, look at how like far you've came even from the last time I saw you." Or at least I would hope she would say that, you know? It's not great trying to hold in your feelings and hold in what you're going through because each and every story is unique in its own way, and everyone deserves to be heard, and everyone deserves to share their heart and their story because your story is important. It might not be important to everybody, but there are going to be a good number of people out there that your story is going to touch in one way or another. And again, with this podcast, this is what I'm hoping to do. I really want to connect with people. I want them to feel and understand that situations aren't forever and you can change it. And moving forward, you can reverse the stigma and you can heal your inner child. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. I've done it. I'm going through it and I'm going to continue to do it. And I'm going to share with you along the way how it's done. And hopefully, I can give tips and tricks to help you all. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned next week for a continuation of reversing the stigma and how I healed my inner child. Thanks, guys.